And welcome, everyone. It is Angelo Robles. Great to see you all. Many of you have probably been seeing too much of me the last 2 or 3 weeks, but I hope you never feel that way. Today, I have a special guest, and unlike many of my programs, I actually have two today, correct? One at 2 p.m. Eastern and one solo on mainly best practices in the family office at 3. But I have a special guest today. He has a limited amount of time, so we're only going to have half an hour. And I haven't seen him in 5 years. Last time was at the Battery in San Francisco. He was a wonderful guest, and I very much look forward to today. So, again, everyone, I'm Angelo Robles, host of the Angelo Robles podcast and the founder at Family Office TV, SFO Continuity, and Billionaire Mastermind. So it's really excited to be here today on this live program. So I hope many of you are following me and what I'm doing on LinkedIn. I'm at Family Office and at Family Office TV on YouTube, at Family Office on Twitter, and on the other platforms where I couldn't get that, Angelo Robles Media on Instagram, on Twitch, and on my new Rumble, where I'm going to be very active on that beginning soon, but go and sign up now. And those of you on YouTube, please feel free to be interactive. Super chats are awesome. Click on it. Love a good contribution. Love your question to rise to the top and ask it. Or I'll ask it, of course, on your behalf. So today, human-machine interface is coming. And we have a special guest, and that would be the before hinted at Zoltan Istvan. Zoltan writes and speaks on transhumanism, artificial intelligence, and the future. Currently a graduate at the University of Oxford, his 7-book essay collection is titled the Zoltan Istvan Futurist Collection. He's also the subject, I remember, back in 2019, of the documentary film Immortality or Bust. Zoltan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me back.
Thank you. Really excited about today. Why don't we start with genetic engineering, while holding great potential for various applications, also presents several potential dangers that need careful consideration. What are the potential dangers and unintended consequences?
Yeah, well, genetic editing, genetic engineering, these are some of the most radical technologies we really have, probably next to AI, that is happening in the world today. And basically, you can go and try to do crazy things like grow a third eyeball on the back of your head because evolution may have forgotten
how useful that would be.
Yes, or if you were, maybe you're in construction business, you can grow a couple extra arms. You can hammer twice as quick or something like that.
And I can make twice as much money.
Yes,
or work half as hard and get the work done.
Of course. So people are working on these things. People are experimenting with these things. But I think where genetic editing mostly is working right now for us is in trying to make it so that we can edit out the potentiality of diseases even before you were born. And so, China was the very first country that actually had some genetically edited babies born. The scientist was quickly reprimanded. But he had essentially edited out the gene for, or the ability to get HIV for a child that had been exposed, I think, to it. And that said, it's very hard because nobody's really sure what's happening with this exact story. But it did happen a few years ago, and the world kind of threw up its hands and arms because genetic editing is such a powerful technology. Should we really have the ability to edit out whatever we want? Because we might make people that are super tall and super strong, but that doesn't really, it's not very fair to the people that are not very tall and maybe weak right now. So genetic editing poses a huge amount of questions, even if it's already here.
Yes, and there's a variety of ways we could go with that one, but in 27 minutes left, I'm going to have to kind of keep it moving pretty quick. What are the challenges in creating seamless and intuitive interactions between humans and machines?
Well, I think that first off, the biggest challenge is consciousness. Like we really just don't understand how our brain works perfectly yet. Maybe some scientists would say not even very well at all yet. And so here we are trying to create an interface between our brain and machine interface, maybe like uploading ourselves into the cloud or uploading ourselves into AI or being one with AI. So it's very difficult for us when we don't even understand how our own brain works. Now, we understand very well how things like the arm works. You know, if we can easily get the arm to move. There are people like, for example, war veterans from Afghanistan who had an arm blown off, and now we have a neural kind of system that we patch into them. They can now play the piano. They can now grab a beer. They can now even have touch with a robotic arm tied into their actual neural system. But we can't do that exactly with the brain yet. That's where Elon Musk and companies like Neuralink are coming in and trying to work on this stuff.
Excellent. What role does virtual reality and augmented reality play in enhancing machine-human interactions?
Well, I think ultimately, virtual reality is where we would all end up, in a world where people don't die, people have the endless ability or unlimited ability to do pretty much anything they want, to be anybody they want, maybe to be many things that they want, and multiple things all at once. So it's kind of the final frontier. Right now, though, when we think of virtual reality, we think of it in terms of just like avatars and things like that. But eventually, this will be a fully immersive experience. You will put on a haptic suit and virtual reality goggles, and maybe even tie into your neural system, so you will actually 100% be in virtual reality, at least feeling your way, maybe doing sports, maybe playing in the World Cup because you're now a soccer star or something like that, some kind of video game like that. That's where we're going. Now, whether we can actually make it so that we can fully immerse ourselves, where you and I could, like, for example, this interview, maybe in 5 years' time, we would just do it in person. I'm at my winery right now in Napa Valley. We could just you could be here, you could be tasting some wine, even though you're not really tasting it virtually. And, we would be able to do that. So that's the goal of virtual reality. Whether we can kind of get to that stage in the next 5 to 10 years, that's up more for question because of companies, of the interface between consciousness and not. But I do believe we're going to get there.
And that is going to be one of my upcoming questions on currently our capability. We probably have more foresight into what it could look like. We just don't have the quote unquote, the horsepower, the capability yet. But that does take me a little off track. Ray Kurzweil, the most iconic futurist, I believe, said things relative to singularity and advancements like you're talking about. I think he might have said as soon as 2030. That sounds, even by your standards, that may be a little quick.
I got to be honest, like when we look at, so I'm a graduate student in the philosophy department at the University of Oxford. We have some of the best AI philosophers in the world there, like Nick Bostrom and whatnot. And, in my AI classes, nobody had seen ChatGPT coming. Nobody had seen how quickly AI is evolving. So when you talk about merging ourselves into virtual realities and into artificial intelligences and even genetic editing, everything is the domain of the microprocessor. Everything is the domain of the microchip. So however fast that develops is going to be where we end up. But one thing's for sure, because of things like ChatGPT or Google's Bard, the development has been much faster than most people thought. So Ray Kurzweil seemed to be way off 2 years ago. Everyone's like, no, it'll never happen by 2030. Now, all of a sudden, everyone's like, oh, it's increasing. The odds of it happening, a singularity and AI that's twice as smart as, a million times smarter than us, it's happening much quicker than we thought. I would say certainly, if not by 2030, we're now looking at 2035. And I have jumped from 2045 to 2035 in probably the last 18 months based on how fast the generative AI intelligences have progressed.
And maybe a question related to that, and you're correct. ChatGPT just kind of burst on the storm. What was it, late November? We're now August of 2023. And it seems like it might have been a hockey stick. AI for a while was perceived to be a little flat, and then boom. And now the race is off and running with the big tech giants and others around the world. Could I make the point that it's not true AI, it's more large language models, LLM, which is not quite as impressive, but is it a step in the right direction? And how far away are we from more common use? Like, imagine what Alphabet has with DeepMind, what the US government has, what China has. Are we going to have that capability more available to the large scale public as soon as 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, I mean, and I agree with you. ChatGPT is not a real intelligence yet. It's just something that's rehashing things it knows. But what happened was nobody thought it could rehash so well so quickly. We thought ChatGPT would have been something in the 2028 or 2029, but it happened 5 years quicker. So now we just, as futurists, have to take a look and say, wait a second. If this J curve, or as you said, hockey stick, goes right up, what if that happens again with AI consciousness or AI intelligence that has a consciousness? So all of a sudden, we've all been kind of left in the dark. And I think the other thing can be said is we know that when big companies have great ideas like ChatGPT, they don't share them with the media. They don't share them with the public. They work on it, and then they release it to the surprise of the entire world. And so that's another thing is we just don't really know. I live in Silicon Valley. We don't know what people are working on. We don't know the intensity, the craziness, the wildness of what's going to be happening. But I think, that's part of the excitement. But I think whatever happens, we can assume that things are going to happen quicker than we first thought.
I mean, I'm trying to put a little bit of again, I gotta always be there for my family office audience. So starting to spin it, and then I'll go back to some of the technical stuff, but a little bit there. Many prognosticators, economists, and macro thinkers, I've had so many of them on my program in the last couple of months. Global GDP down, population down, deficits all over the place, challenge, a war going on, Russia and the Ukraine, nuclear threat kind of a button away, it's around the corner. And then I try to I'm kind of a Mr. Negative, but try to put a positive light. What are things that that we could do to overcome at least some of that, more so from the economic perspective? Will real AI in the coming years be a boon or bust? I could make the argument it could wickedly enhance productivity, which is good. And that coupled with inevitably near free energy cost could be a massive boon to mankind. Am I right? Am I being Mr. Optimist for a change?
No, I totally think you're right. I think AI is going to revolutionize the world. It's going to make it so that, first off, those that have wealth are going to probably profit much more so than ever before because their productivity and their asset base is going to go through the roof. I mean, this usually technology is some type of a non-inflationary type of thing, but this time AI is probably going to be highly inflationary because it's going to create so much more productivity. So I think it's very good for business in general. Whether it's good for workers is a whole nother question, and whether it's something that prompts civil, strife, that's a whole nother question entirely. But I think AI, for especially the people in the family office world, are going to benefit from it greatly. And so will, I think, consumers, because things will become so much simpler, easier. You'll always have kind of something to talk to that can drive your cars, that can go shopping for you, that can figure out whatever problems you have. I mean, in this way, it's great. But, there is still this big challenge that it will ultimately have to replace probably many jobs.
We're probably not going to have time to do a deep dive. And I think we spoke about this in 2017 when during that year before you were a presidential candidate. And one of the things I guess I have to bring up for your comment there is, yes, it does appear, unlike maybe a prior industrial revolution, that there could be jobs that go away and are not replaced. But we've always said that, and somehow as humans, we've been pretty creative. But my bigger picture point is the government and those that are rich, the super wealthy, they don't want an uprising of the masses, wicked inflation, food shortages. I mean, that's when you go from a hardcore cold civil war to a hot civil war, and we have problems not just here, but around the world. In other words, what I'm kind of getting to, and I don't like it, but I don't know if it's inevitable. So that doesn't happen, universal base income.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm still beating the drum. I'll probably run for the presidency again sometime when I'm finished my Oxford studies. I mean, I can't see a way out of universal basic income as a necessity to make sure that there isn't civil strife. I think what happens is those that are able to own assets like real estate and technology, stock market and technology companies really benefit from this. But those that are working and get their jobs replaced are going to have some kind of income. But the good news is people are going to be so wealthy, and I think this is already becoming quite obvious. I mean, even in the 5 years, my own wealth has probably doubled, maybe even tripled from when we spoke. And I feel more, and I don't want to say this for your clientele, but I'm more giving of taxes these days and more generous because of the boom that I have seen in my own personal wealth. And assuming that many other people that have seen their wealth go up dramatically probably feel the same way. So I am much more inclined to try to support a basic income of some way in order to make sure that all of society benefits from the future. And I think they are, because remember, they may not have to work anymore. They may just be able to play and have fun and be on the beach in the Bahamas and strum a guitar. You know, not everybody has to be really rich. So the point of the story, though, is that
Yes,
universal basic income could work for everyone.
Being a wise guy. Okay, I'm going to push back on you on that a little bit. And again, given my audience of the uber rich and family offices need to have a little bit of a focus there, kind of like you just did. So if there's UBI relative to the challenges that we have now with our deficit and some of the things I brought up in my prior economic and macro discussions, and again, we don't want quote unquote 80% of the masses to, you know, God forbid, the minions, as some may say, to go crazy. Therefore, you know, free housing, just enough food, I don't know, on top of that, $20,000, $30,000. I mean, to me, and maybe I'm just too capitalistic, that's not much of a life. Sadly, where I'm going to agree with you a little bit, I talk in colleges, I have a lot of relationships as I look to be involved with people that are incredibly old, in the middle, and young, and I want to know how they think. A lot of the Gen Zers now, they're not overly optimistic about the future. They're afraid. And if I were to say, do you want greatness and massive wealth, but you're going to have to put yourself out there. You're going to have to get lucky. You're going to have to take risks. You're going to have to grind. You're going to have to make sacrifices. Or option two, you're going to be okay. You're going to have housing. You're going to have food, but you're never really going to be rich. My God, I'm sounding like Klaus Schwab at the World Economic Forum. You're going to own nothing and be happy. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. I'm a hardcore libertarian, but I got to take my perspective out of it and listen to what I'm hearing with my boots on the ground. I don't know. There's a lot of the young ones now are kind of afraid. I think a lot of them will go for that safe option.
Yeah, no, and I think also we might, as we get into the future, especially a transhuman future, we might start looking at capitalism different. Capitalism's end goal may have just been to get our society to a place where people can be happy and people don't necessarily need to work. You know, I mean, you and I think differently. We like, let's get our feet dirty, let's make some money. You know, I mean, I've always thought like that. My parents came from illegally from Hungary. They had to, you know, cross the border in the middle of the night in a hay truck, and they came here to make a life, the American dream. But the American dream may not necessarily appeal to Gen Z. Maybe just being on the Bahamas, playing the guitar and doing something on the web and virtual reality, just enjoying themselves might be what appeals to them. And I don't want to get in the way of that. I just want to make sure that everybody's fed, happy, housed, and that there's no civil war.
Okay, again, if we had 2 hours, we could go super deep, but let me keep it moving. What ethical, a little different than my earlier questions, what ethical considerations should be taken into account when designing human machine capabilities?
Well, very tough question. The problem here is really that if you try to control AI, then it can never really truly be, AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, an intelligence that's as smart as you. So if you try to put too many hindrances into it, you don't even know if it's really going to be free. And of course, most AI scientists, or many AI scientists, would like to see an AI as smart as us and maybe even far smarter. I would like something far smarter. I'm hoping it'll have some paternal instincts and maybe actually take our human selves into a whole nother dimension, whole nother transhumanist future. So, but you can't put too many ethical limitations on it, because if that happens, then you're kind of enslaving it to some extent. So I think you're going to have a balance between saying, look, you can't kill people, you got to follow the rules of society, but at the same time, you can be as creative as you need. If you take over the stock market and make it so that only you make money, that's the way the game goes. So, I mean, this is a very difficult ethical question, because you want to give it freedom, but you also don't want it to be so much better than you that it makes you obsolete.
Okay, the challenge with that, I know that sounds great, and what Elon and Gates and others have spoken about that. My problem with that, and maybe damn it, I just see things too negatively. One of the reasons that you said that this may not be realistic and may not be to maximize it to its true potential, but come on, around the world, I don't know, in China, in North Korea, in parts of the Middle East, there's going to be one bad actor that's going to say, this is great. The world is listening to all these considerations. We've cracked the code and we've created a monster, and now it's going to take over. That almost seems inevitable.
Yes, yes. And a long time ago, I wrote for Vice about the AI imperative, which is that it's absolutely essential that a democratic country like the United States establishes the predominant AI in the world so that we can always shut down all the other AIs. Because, I think it would be very challenging to have a country like either Russia or China develop AI with their cultural viewpoint. That would be something that seems undemocratic to many of us in the United States. And so it's a race right now. It's a complete arms race. And it's one of the reasons why Biden and other politicians have not called for actually controlling AI very much, because you don't want to put, everyone's afraid of ChatGPT. Everyone's afraid of what these things can do, but we're even more afraid that China will get to it first. So we just sort of have to and this is where, as a libertarian like yourself, I just kind of love it, because we're kind of put ourselves in a situation where you just got to let the dice fall where they may.
Yeah, but to think that the US is always going to be the global leader. At this point, China and even Russia, but China does some things better than us right now. From what I gather, we're a little bit ahead on AI, but it's pretty darn close and getting closer. So to think that we're always going to have that edge appears to be a little Pollyanna and unrealistic. But on that note, I got 4 questions. We got a limited amount of time. We'll keep on punching along. You mentioned it earlier, how does Neuralink contribute to the advancement of machine-human interface capabilities?
Well, Neuralink, Elon Musk's company, is really the leading, company that's dealing with brain implants. And they now have some human trials occurring, and they're, just trying to start with dealing with medical issues and solving medical things like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. But really, we're talking about, obviously Elon, like everybody else, and as he's spoken about, wants to upload their brains to the consciousness and to expand the human horizon. So I don't know. For me, the biggest dilemma is really that human trials will probably, just getting something like this passed is going to take 10 years' time. And the problem is, will AI already become some kind of super intelligence by then? I'm not really even sure that companies like Neuralink are going to make a difference. It's going to be much more of a question of whether what has happened with AI, and whether because AI might just come into the scene within 5 or 7 years, as we discussed earlier, and instantaneously develop the perfect kind of interface, brain chip that would allow us to communicate with it. So, we have all these trials, and our bureaucracy takes 10 years to put usually 12 years to put any medical device on the market. We might have something much quicker because of AI. Whether that's a good scenario, that's a whole different thing. But either way, I still support what Neuralink's doing. And one day they'll probably be the world leader in connecting so you and I can do this interview just in our heads.
I kind of asked my next 2 questions in a different way, but we'll just buzz through them. I would say almost demonstrate, is it there, or when it will be there, sufficient actual quantum computing and actual AI, not just to the masses LLM, that are sufficient for us to move beyond human to human intelligence and make it machine centric. But I guess my follow up to that, is that going to be to the advantage of people that are in the know and have money? Are they going to get an advantage to potentially be kind of superhuman before everyone else, making it more of a bifurcation between the super rich and the have-nots?
Well, quantum computing is really the $1 million question, and you've heard, just the last few months, we've heard so much about it. If it turns out to be real and we can use it, then it will simply make almost all our computing power right now obsolete. I mean, in some cases, it can be thousands of times faster. And so the question is, can we write software code that even can utilize that and relate to our daily lives? But the reality is, whether this will benefit wealthy people and in society in general, I generally think historically science has always benefited everybody. And it will probably continue to benefit the rich a little bit more. But I don't believe we're going to come to a point when the rich are going to have this extra ability to take on superhuman powers, whereas others don't. I think governments would probably step in and say something like, hey, let's make this available to everybody, either through socialized medicine. I'm not a big giant fan. I'm a fan of universal basic income, paying for everyone's medicine. I'm not sure socialized medicine's a good thing to follow, just because they don't really work that well as our capitalistic system. However, it may be a way to do it so that there are no haves and have-nots. The haves and have-nots have gotten to such a bad, inequality has been growing so fast that I really do believe that more than ever, the super rich and the rich have to watch out, because if it gets out of hand, it ends in civil war, and that's not good for anybody.
Yes, and I do many geopolitical discussions, and a lot of people in the military, and these are all things that I uniquely, I think, for the family office world, and sometimes not without controversy, bring to quote unquote my audience. Taking it back a little bit again to the world of wealth and family offices, how should they look at some of the things we discussed in a brief amount of time today, from quantum to AI to a machine-human interface to everything is changing? One, I guess, how could they make money and profit? How should they be investing? But also, how should they look at it with their foundations and from a societal perspective? I think we touched on both a little bit, but maybe in some level of parting comments, a little bit more deeper thought on that.
Well, I would say first off, I would say any family office should be very careful to not necessarily replace employees with AI immediately. This is such a...
I was getting to that.
This is a challenging time where if all of a sudden something fails, then these family offices are left without any employees and all these machines that nobody knows what to do with. And I also think there's a kind of an honor point of view. Yes, we've created something that can replace jobs, but just because it can doesn't mean we want to do that right away. If we rock the boat too much, we stand to lose a lot more than we actually gain. Now, in terms of the positive stuff, I'd say yes, embrace it, learn how to use it, try to make more money off it. I mean, AI can do wonderful things in terms of trading and forecasting and models and stuff like that. But with any great discovery, I would take slow steps and try to make sure that one doesn't kind of tip over the boat as they're entering this brand new kind of waterway. And I think if that happens, then people are going to end up finding that AI makes it better. And what can people do realistically? Invest in those technology companies that are dealing with it. That's the very best thing. I mean, you're already seeing a boom in the technology and the big stocks that are there, but there's going to be a lot of startups. There's going to be a boom just like there was when the internet came out. I mean, the AI is almost equivalent in terms of investing to the internet. So look for that coming in the next 1 to 4 years for sure.
And I'm going to have a final question, but before I do that, I want the fair chance also in our very short interview today, by my standards, for the audience to know how they can learn more about you and reach out. I know you're active on Twitter. What's your Twitter handle? Do you have a newsletter or blog or website?
Yeah, absolutely. So my Twitter handle is Zoltan_Istvan. The same thing on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I'd say that I have a couple interesting things going. First off, the documentary Immortality or Bust that featured my presidential campaign came out. It's on Amazon Prime, and it's on internationally. It's on Plex TV, so you can now see it everywhere over the world. It won a few awards. My novel, The Transhumanist Wager, is what really launched my public career. It's a great book on people trying to live indefinitely through science. It includes AI. I just yesterday made the great announcement that someone has, Dr. Ben Murnane, has been writing. He's a writer. He's been writing a biography on my life. Took 3 years to do it. He found a publisher. It'll be out next year in June, but we did the first release of the cover, and it's now actually available for pre-order and Amazon and things like that. So I've been really excited to have a bunch of different kind of big things happening out. And then, of course, I'm writing a lot for Newsweek right now. So you can pretty much find me every month writing something. I'm condensing most of my Oxford essays into short articles for Newsweek. So just Google and you'll find me.
Maybe the final question, you could keep it to 1 minute, then you have to run and I'll do a close. You like to talk about it. I like to talk about it. What would be a 1 minute answer to how everything we just said relative to AI in the future relates to an incredibly antiquated education system that we have around the world? If anything, it might even be worse in some ways here in the US than in other countries. Give me a nirvana of what education could look like in a couple of years if no unions were involved.
What an important question, because I got two daughters, 9 and 12, and all of a sudden, once ChatGPT came out, I stopped saving for their college funds. Just because my wife kind of imagined that they would grow up to be doctors like her. And I said, I would be highly surprised if they could go through, college, the graduate programs, then medical school, and that there wouldn't be robotic doctors already doing stuff. So a lot of people don't like my take on this, but I would spend more money on real estate and more money on investing and teaching people to be practical, use tools, build things, rather than actually try to send them to 4-year colleges or even graduate school where they can kind of learn things. I mean, go if you want to have social connections and fun experiences, that's fine. But if you're going to college to try to get a job, that's going to be obsolete in 3 or 4 years because of AI. So I would work more on making money today and learning to do things with your hands, because that's something that's never going to go away. Even if robotics can do everything, you can still fix your own house.
What do you think about the capability of emotional intelligence from the perspective of learning social media marketing, and more importantly, the ability to sell, the capability of many people that are 7-figure earners that sometimes never even went to college? Do you think that capability of selling is still a talent that is going to be needed?
It'll always be a talent. I'm sure AI will do it better within a couple of years' time, because people that make those 7 figures without going to college are going to be there asked to teach the AI. That's how the world works. And then they're going to teach all those secrets. So I think at some point, every single job becomes better done by AI, at least from an economic point of view. Again, the question is that a moral thing? And that's something everybody has to answer.
Well, our special guest today was Zoltan Istvan. That's Zoltan, Zoltan, last name Istvan. Zoltan, it's great to see you again. Look forward to talking to you maybe later in the year. You have to run. I'm going to give about a minute or two close, but thank you so much for being a guest today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Well, everyone, that was a little different, but again, I like to do things a little differently within the family office world. I've known Zoltan for a couple of years. I found him unique and creative, and I reached out to him years ago, and it's great after we haven't connected to have him back now, given the advancements of ChatGPT and AI, and simply 5 years went by. And again, imagine what 5 more years now looking forward is going to look like. And as someone of wealth and resources or active in the family office world, these are things you have to think about. It's very hard to extrapolate years in the future, but I'm not saying 20, 30 years. I'm saying just a couple, and the world is changing. If you're a family of wealth, you owe it to society to be impactful and be valuable and be a member. It's very, very important to be contributory to those that are maybe less fortunate, partially for self-serving reasons that we hinted at in today's interview. If there's an uprising, which there has been at various revolutions over the course of time in England and France and other countries that we all know, what happens to the super rich? I'm going to hesitate for a second. Again, what happens to a lot of the super rich, unless you're omnipotent as a royal, you usually, I'll use a nice word, you're not there anymore. This is just the reality of how the world works. And those of you from an SFO executive perspective, and Zoltan hinted at it, things are changing and your skills need to be updated and need to be adapted. The little announcement that I would have is, many of you know I've worked on 2 significant master classes. They are significant and deep on creating a top 1% family office and sovereign risk / disaster prep for billionaires. I have a third. It's in the earliest stages. It won't be ready for at least 6 more months. And basically it's AI in family offices. I'll find a sexier title than that, I promise. But it's going to help both the principals, the executives, and those that both service and even want to be an executive in a family office to learn, to adapt, and be fluid in a changing world. Again, we can't rest on our laurels. Stop playing it safe. Stop being down the middle. We have to take calculated risk. We have to learn new things. This world is changing. Now, for now, I've been giving over the last 2 or 3 weeks a fair amount of my content available and live and on my platforms, partially to get a little bit of brand awareness. I get it. It's new, as I've left Family Office Association, to what I'm doing now. But that is going to start to transition the week after next, when my new website comes out, we hope, August 15th at angelorobles.com, where I'm still going to do a live. I'll probably do it more consistently Thursday evening, and I'll occasionally, maybe once a quarter, have a week where I'm a little bit more active in my interviews and programs to the public. But for those that want to get real in-depth to my economic, my macro, my investment foresight, my experiences, mindset, and traits of billionaires, my interviews with them, people like Zoltan, where we maybe go behind the scenes and ask really, really tough questions and potentially actionable ideas that you can make money and you can benefit from. You're going to have to be a member. In terms of what I do with my enterprises at angelorobles.com, at Family Office TV, being one of them, where maybe we do the first part of the interview that's more open to the public. And the latter part, you got to be a member. You got to be a participant in terms of what we're doing to get the value. My God, if you get one great idea, you'll get like 10 or 20. But one great idea that you take action on over the course of the year, it's going to pay, I don't know, 100, 1,000, 10,000 fold a modest fee to be a part of something like what I'm effectively launching at Family Office TV. Don't have time to do a deep dive really into that, or SFO continuity, or Billionaire Mastermind, but in the coming weeks that will be coming. But know that a lot of my extreme activity in live and more to the public on these programs is going to start to be a little more concise, and a lot of it's going to move behind a membership and a platform that we want you to be a part of. So on that note, and many of you know today at 3 o'clock, I have another program on best practices in the family office that I'm going to have to run. So on that note, I'm out. Follow me on all the social medias that I noted, both on YouTube and LinkedIn. Thank you so much. And again, come August 15th, angelorobles.com will be much more interactive and share much more of the vision that I have in the family office community moving forward. Thank you all so much. Have a great day.